Hello, this is Writers at Work, a podcast for readers and writers about the joys, heartaches, challenges, and satisfaction of the creative writing process. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. With me today on Writers at Work is Adriana Trigiani, who has made a remarkable career in the arts, primarily as a writer. Her current novel is The View from Lake Como, which she describes as a story of a woman who decides to build a life she can live in and the house that goes along with it. The woman is an Italian-American from New Jersey. The house is in Carrera, Italy. And if you know anything about me and my work, you can pretty much guess that I love this novel. Adriana first drew notice as a playwright, then wrote for such TV programs as The Cosby Show. Her first screenplay, Three to Get Married, was produced in 1986. Almost 30 years later, she wrote and directed the major motion picture Big Stone Gap, based on her novel of the same name. She adopted her novel Very Valentine for Lifetime and directed the feature film Then Came You. Adriana wrote and directed the award-winning documentary Queen of the Big Time, the story of her father's hometown of Rosetto, Pennsylvania. She hosts the podcast You Are What You Read and is the co-founder of the Origin Project, an in-school writing program in Appalachia that serves more than 1,700 students in her home state of Virginia. As a best-selling novelist, Adriana may be best known for her Big Stone Gap series and also her Very Valentine trilogy. As I understand it, Adriana has published a novel in each of the past 20 years. Many of those books celebrate her Italian heritage and working women who are tireless in the pursuit of their ambitions. I should add here that Adriana is tireless in her commitment to her readers and is amid a tour in support of The View from Lake Como. Please visit her website for dates and locations of her appearances. I'm very eager to meet and converse with a writer after my own heart, so I say, Adriana Trigiani, welcome to Writers at Work.
Grazie mille.
I want to begin with something specific that I think you do really well, and particularly in The View from Lake Como, and that is placing the reader deep inside a culture or even a subculture. What are the risks in doing so, do you think?
Well, Jim, I think there's not any risk to any of it if you do it well. I think the risk is in not pulling off the authenticity or the truth of the thing. So if you're writing and you're being direct on the page with your storytelling and your characters, I think that's what the reader expects of us. So I don't think there's risk involved in that. I mean, maybe somebody won't like the world you created or the characters you created, and that does happen. But I don't think there's any risk at all. I think the risk in life is not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. No, I ask because I was very at ease with Jess's family.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And I will tell you why, if I may.
Yes.
My family came to Hoboken from Puglia, which would make me a paisana of Jess, I guess.
Yes, so you would.
My grandfather may have cut the hair of Jess's ancestors. No, go on, please.
That's great. I love it. He was a barber?
Yeah, he was a barber in Hoboken.
Fantastic.
And probably half a generation before your Jess's family arrived. So I'm the oldest grandson in my family, so I understand the honored position held by Jess's brother and why the family made the decision it made.
Right.
Now, one side of the family calls Cavatelli, the other side calls it Ciccatelli. But as Grammy B says, it doesn't matter as long as we have Sunday dinner together.
That's right.
So I'm right there. I can smell the room. I can hear the banter. But do readers who are not Italian get it at that level?
Absolutely. I just did 24 cities.
Tell me more, please.
Well, Jim, I don't know if you come across this, but I do, that sometimes when I'm traveling, we get into conversations about other ethnicities. And really, there's a kind of a common bond there with the Italians. It always has been. There's always been a very deep admiration of our familial loyalty. And I think it's aspirational, but I also see it in my Latino brothers and sisters. I see it in Jewish families. I certainly see it in Polish families, Irish, English. We celebrate in probably a more routine way with our Sunday dinners, but there's a love of family and a centeredness to the family experience that can only come from breaking bread at a table. And I think we meet it culturally on every level, but I don't find that folks are ever alienated by the Italian experience. I mean, look at some of the art in the world that's been dramatized. It's Italian themed.
Sure.
So I think there's a familiarity and a comfort level there, and people feel welcome to the table.
Well, Adriana, I do think some of it has to do with your ability as a writer. You invite us in, and you do tap into the familiar touchstones, and I think that what you do does translate.
Well, I have a theory about it, Jim, about the Italian experience that came from a conversation I had with Jhumpa Lahiri, who now writes solely in Italian.
Wow.
And she's an Indian American immigrant. Her parents were. And she grew up in America. And she's decided at this point in her career, she's a professor and a best-selling author, to write only in Italian. And so I said to her, I said, Jhumpa, why do you think you're so attracted to the Italian culture? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, I said, I have an idea. Every culture on the planet has a footprint in Italy. Every single one. And you can look at it from time immemorial and you can track it. I think people feel welcome there. And I think the Italian experience has a universality to it that people relate to. And I think also people see themselves in the Italian culture. They have a kind of a connection and a camaraderie with the people. That's what I posited to Jhumpa. And she sort of nodded. She said, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to run through my mind of, have I ever met anybody who is just outright, openly hostile to the history of the Italians? And I can't really. I can't. I think.
Jim, you're going to see it in fourth, fifth, and sixth generation Italians. You'll start to see it because they are. There's a distance from the cultural ideal and the cultural expectations and the familial expectations in a family. I've met one young Italian man who said he doesn't relate to it at all because there's such a distance there. And if the parents didn't celebrate it, or the great-grandparents or the grandparents, you might have a little bit of that. But mostly people celebrate their Italian roots, mostly.
Yeah. I want to get back to the view from Lake Como.
Sure.
And I don't want to give too much away. I think we feel that Jess Barada, and I should say that she's a designer for the family's marble and stone business. I think we feel she's trapped. And one way she's trapped is by love, her family's love. And that love is a weapon in the hands of some family members. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
I think it is. Very dramatic, but I think it makes sense.
And we know that, and this, I really admire the way you did this. We know that Jess yearns to break free, but it's not very clear that she's going to. I mean, I think through most of the first act, it appears that she's not going to be able to break free. That the ties are too strong. But an opportunity to do so arrives. Business trip to Italy. And her mother doesn't see it as Jess does, or she doesn't want Jess to break free. So she invites herself on the trip. I
Hmm.
found Jess's response genuinely shocking. Do you mind
Hmm.
if I reveal it?
You may go ahead. Absolutely.
She says, "You are not invited."
Hmm.
What did that line or scene mean to you?
Well, for once in her life, she's standing up for herself and what she wants to do, which she has never done. So she's very direct because she's fed up. She's had it. She studied Italian in college. She was an Italian culture major, and she's never been to Italy. She can read and write Italian, hopefully speak it when she gets there, but she hasn't been. And finally, her uncle says, there's a moment, we're at a crossroads with the company, and I want you to take this company over eventually, but there's no way you can do that unless you see what we're selling and where we get it and how that works. So they're planning a trip. And of course, her mother hears about it and immediately invites herself and the entire family to go along
It,
because she has a dream to go to Italy too.
Adriana, you handled that so beautifully because for the reader, that is a gut-wrenching moment
Mm-hmm.
because we're on Jess's side at that point,
Yeah.
and we can feel it slipping away.
Mm-hmm.
If you had written that line in red ink on the page, I don't think it could have been more impactful.
Wow.
Yeah, she just, I felt like standing up and applauding. I actually read it out loud to my wife. I said, "Listen to this."
Well, Jim, the dramatic tension is one of the artful choices a writer makes in a novel, must make in a novel in order to sustain a story over 400 or so pages. So that's really important to me. And I'm thrilled that you noticed that
Yeah.
because she has to, when the moment comes, all the dialogue that leads up to it has to have a certain filed edge softness to it, a pillowy softness, so that when she does stand up for herself, it's a mic drop.
Yep. So tell us about Uncle Louie.
Well, this is one of my favorite characters I've ever written.
I bet.
He's just a natural, and I can kind of feel his soul in this novel in a very deep way. Just even the way he dresses, how he lives, what his front yard looks like, his long marriage and relationship with his wife Lil, the fact that they couldn't have kids, and how that informed all of the choices in his life. And at the beginning of the novel that this is a man of faith. He's in the Knights of Columbus. He has a deep connection to the ever after and a deep connection to service and the idea that he is on a level serving the family, but he also knows he's the boss. And being the boss comes with a deep responsibilities, and he accepts those. But he also has to be pretty tough. He had to fire his sister because she's terrible with the public. And this is Jess's mother.
Right.
So there's always been that notion of he would do what was best for everybody, even if it hurt him. So if he was sent to the island, and that's the place in the Capodimonte Barada family that you went when people aren't talking to you or they put you in the deep freeze, that island is there. And you don't want to get on that island because you can't get off of it very quickly. And the person that put you on it is the only person that can take you off of it. So you're at the mercy of another person's idea of you. So I love this character. And I felt like he was in every way the person he was born to be. And that is the luxury of being an Italian male or a
Yes.
prince in the family.
Yes.
That's your luxury.
Yes. I think that he embodies a certain characteristic in Italian Americans that's also a flaw in which love and transparency are not always compatible.
Right,
That is to say, I love you with all my heart except for the part where I keep my secrets.
right, right.
And now that would be an excellent example of his character being understandable by any culture because he has that duality to him.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get all of him.
Right. Right.
Um,
That's so true.
but I don't think we resent him for it.
No, I mean, he's doing the very best he can with the information he has. And as secrets go, I believe that secrets are really important to people, that they keep them for themselves sometimes, because over explaining yourself or inviting too many people into the quiet moments of your soul is a pretty bad idea. I think a secret can only be understood by the person who holds it. Because when it's let out in the open air, forget it.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
causes nothing but problems.
yeah, yeah. I want to talk to you about your application of craft. Um,
Hmm?
it's demonstrated in many ways, but one way I found fascinating was that Jess keeps a diary. It's a journal. She's not a bad writer, but she's no Adriana Trigiani. So I mean, how do you write less well in service of a story?
Well, Jim, there has to be a commitment to an ease on the eye of the reader. And I always find it fascinating when people start talking about different genres inside of the literary canon that we have in the United States of America. I always find it fascinating where there's these divisions. And in the 25 years I've been doing this, it has actually gotten actually the red lines are wider, deeper, and separate us. And what I mean by that is if a story is easy to read and effortless, somehow that makes it less literary. And I think
Right,
that's nuts.
right,
I would turn to the ease of reading Room with a View by E.M. Forster or any of Shakespeare or any of the writers. You know, we could talk about anybody who's out there right now, but there has to be an ease to it so that the reader enters a world and stays there.
right,
So for me, in terms of craft, it has to do really with the development of the characters. And when I hear the voice, then I'm off to the races. Once
right,
I hear that person, that character, I kind of can't stop. And I do a lot of cutting. I overwrite, absolutely. But that's part of the fun when you overdo it and then you have to cut the fabric to the pattern. You know, you can't cut 3 feet on either side of a pattern. You have to cut it to the pattern.
right.
So that's what I attempt to do when I edit, is to make those puzzle pieces fit in a way that that it unspools, as opposed to, you know, grind to a halt and restarts.
Right. And you're conscious of the reader's needs.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah.
Because a writer is also a reader.
Right. I mean, if you're not,
Mm-hmm.
you will find yourself, I think, pandering then. You can
Yeah.
say to yourself as you're editing yourself, what is essential? Um, you don't say to yourself, let me show the reader how smart I am. You're
Oh
thinking,
no, that would be a huge mistake.
right. You're gonna how am I gonna get this reader through this story? Um,
Well, Jim, you know, it's in the intent. The intent is I am serving my reader.
right,
I'm not there to dazzle my reader or impress my reader or show my reader my skills. That's not any of it. All of that is beside the point, and also it detracts from the actual art form.
right,
It has to be an immersive experience
right,
where we come into a world and we say, okay, well, I'm comfortable here. I mean, you just paid me the highest compliment you could pay me, is that it felt natural.
right, right.
There wasn't anything about it that was phony. That would be
No,
the worst.
no, and I also thought it was an interesting way to show us another side of Jess. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jess is anxious and insecure and has been held back.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but in her journal, She knows these things about herself.
Well, she knows she hasn't been seen.
Right. Exactly.
She hasn't been seen. And I think there are lots of us that can relate to not being seen, whether it's at home or on a job or both.
Right. But you succeed in not making her a victim.
Well,
And
that's
she,
good.
and
We
she
don't
has,
want that.
but she has her honor also. You know,
Yes.
and boy, the deck is stacked against her. And yet she never loses that sense of dignity.
You know,
Not,
the airplane ride that she takes when she goes to Italy, Jim, I don't know if you remember this,
I
but
do.
something important happens there. Once she's alone and in the middle seat, way deep in coach, and it's cold and dark in there, and the little lights are on overhead, she can't see her way forward in that moment. And she begins to weep. And she weeps so much, she doesn't realize it, but they have to move her because
Right.
she's disrupting the peaceful three across seat. And you can't do that on an airplane. You have to behave yourself, sit up straight, don't hog the armrests, and you know all the rules. And there's that lady who has all those bags sitting next to her. I mean, there's always people that violate the rules a little bit. But for her, the minute that she's alone in that dark cabin and she's moving so fast towards what she'd always dreamed of seeing, that she really breaks down. And that's a very important scene to me in this book. That and some funny things happen to her, as you know.
Right.
And then something wonderful happens to her. And she's moved to a beautiful seat. And she can't believe it. And she thinks she has to pay for it. She has never traveled, so she doesn't know all that. Traveled a little bit in the United States, but never went overseas. All of those things are part of what it means to get out of your comfort zone as a human being and take a chance on yourself.
Right.
And I believed that was a crystalline setup for what's going to come.
Yeah, she broke. She broke. But then she's reborn.
Yes. Well, that's what we have to do.
Yes.
We have to shatter in order to glue ourselves back together.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I'm being too flattering here, Adriana. So I shouldn't. But you know, that scene occurs naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that concept of surprising but inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's happening, we see the subtext of it. We see
Mm-hmm.
that she has to break before she can be rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well done. Really, I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you started out as a screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Your first novel came out 15 years later.
Yeah.
How long did you have the story of Big Stone Gap within you?
Well, I should clarify that I began in the theater, Jim.
Right.
And I consider the theater my home still.
Ah,
I was a playwright and I had a comedy troupe in New York, and all those skills I use to this day, all of them. And what happened was I had two great friends who got me an agent, and I got hired in television. And I worked on some very prestigious shows as a writer and a producer. I created about 17 pilots that didn't go, as you were wont to do in the 90s and the early aughts. And I saw television kind of take a turn, which is, let me tell you about Big Stone Gap. I mean, I made a documentary about my father's hometown, which is not available to see because I have to change the music out. And in the last 25 years, I haven't had time to do that. but I'm working on it. But it won a bunch of prizes in festivals. And a gentleman came up to me at the Hamptons Film Festival where this documentary about my dad's hometown, Rosetto, Pennsylvania, had won the audience award. And he said, I want you to come see me. What do you want to do next? And I said, Big Stone Gap. Now, I don't know where that came from.
Really?
So I went home and I went into I keep copious notes and notebooks. And I found a scene that I had written in 1985 that was one of the first scenes in Big Stone Gap. Now, then I thought it was a screenplay. Then I thought it might be a television show. And I just kept working with the characters. I never throw anything out, Jim, ever. My father's business was a schmata factory. He was a garment manufacturer. And if pins dropped to the floor, you picked them up with a magnet. All that slag on the floor would be repurposed into quilt pieces. I mean, my father was like ahead of his time in that way. And I learned that from watching him, that you don't throw anything out, and an idea might not be right in this moment, but you don't know. In 15 years, it might be just the ticket.
Right.
So what I did was I was out with my two friends who had helped me get into television. And they had seen the documentary, and I said, I really want to make movies. And so one of the girls named Suzanne Gluck said, I read this screenplay, Big Stone Gap. I think it's a novel. And I said, well, how do you do that? Of course, Jane Eyre is my favorite novel of all time. And I because my mother's a librarian, Jim, I felt like that was sacrosanct in a certain way. I didn't know I was going to write books. Although now I go back and look at things, as you know, as I just said, I was a saver. And I found a paper I wrote in 11th grade where I said, I'm going to write a novel. And I just put that aside when I became a playwright, because the playwriting really took off. And I very practical blue collar person. If it's working, you go with it. If it isn't, run. So the novel basically, the novel basically came from the screenplay. So I sat down and I was working on a television show. And I would get up at 3:00 in the morning, and I'm not kidding. And I would work those 3 hours before I got ready to go into work in the studio. And I did that every day for a year. And then I found I was naturally waking up then, ready to roll. And then I brought this novel, Big Stone Gap, to my friend Suzanne Gluck, who was now a literary agent. And she said, oh, interesting. Okay, I'll give it a read. Well, I kind of was hurt. I thought, I've been working on this thing a year. I'd like you to, have a little commitment here. But she told me later that she did that because she was so excited and she didn't want to get my hopes up.
Right.
Well, by Monday morning, I had a deal. She sold it. Took her 2 days.
Wow. I read Lake Como first.
Yes.
Before I read this book. What I would say about Big Stone Gap is I don't think the elevator pitch would do it justice. And I think a lot of that has to do with the writing. And you've kind of explained that, yes, it was your first novel, but you had a deep and rich understanding of the setting and the characters.
Mm-hmm.
There is an underlying pathos to this story. It could have been very breezy. I mean, you could have written it as a comedy, but I think what you let us know as a writer is that some of these characters who feel they live in this bucolic town, may be fooling themselves. That this idea that they are secure where they are may be an illusion.
That's interesting.
And Ave Maria is the perfect embodiment of that.
Mm-hmm.
She keeps trying to convince herself that everything's fine, but she knows it's not.
That's right.
And there's this Greek choir of friends who love her, who keep telling her, you should have more.
Mm,
Um,
yes.
so I mean, now you're a first-time novelist. Um, was that always the tone of the novel? Was it always going to be treading that line between comedy and something a little bit darker?
Yes, because I think that's what life is. I mean, we're talking to each other right now. We're going to get off the phone and somebody's going to call us with terrible news.
Oh gosh.
Or the news might be about us. It might be my bad news or your bad news. Life, I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about how time is sand in your hands. And and what do you do to ameliorate that? Do you step up your pace? Do you work twice as hard, which is kind of my solution to everything? I work 7 days a week. I don't think it's that fun to be my husband, but and the amount of travel that I have to do. But you have to kind of have an idea that it's now or never when you're a writer. And I, of course, admire writers that I adore that take 8 years to write a novel. I think it's beautiful, but it's not me. And
Right.
I also feel it's in a certain way, I approach it like an athlete. Like the more I do it, the better I get. And I try things. I don't ever do the same novel twice. I just can't do that. I'm not a genre fiction writer, although I much admire that, and I feel genre fiction is akin to when I work staff on a television show. You have the same character
Ah,
and the same vibe, and then you recreate that week after week, hopefully with nuance and something new
yeah.
ways to tell the story. But basically, you're delivering the tried and true to the audience because that's what the audience wants.
How close to the original screenplay was the shooting screenplay for the film?
Well, oddly close. They were always screaming at me about cutting pages, which I did, but I was the director. So it was, I'm sure it was a nightmare for the producers that I was the writer and the director. And really the casting, they brought me a couple of great people, but I pretty much cast it. And on top of that, I shot it in my hometown. So the town was behind me, you see. And producers they're funny. They the answer to everything is no. And what I want you to know when you watch that movie is I had one camera.
Oh my God.
One camera. Mm-hmm. And in a way, when I look back at it, I think, oh, they were setting me up to fail. But what people don't understand about me is I won't fail.
Yeah.
I won't. I just won't. I had a point with the producers where I said, you can all go home. I know this isn't for everybody. I grew up here. I understand. I'm an Appalachian. I love these people. I get these people. They may not be for you. There's no Starbucks here. You're not going to have that experience on this film set. This is going to be down and dirty.
Yeah.
But it was, oh, so beautifully satisfying as an artist, even though it was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really satisfying.
Well, doing the hard thing well, isn't that's the secret to life, huh?
Well, take one camera and you got to make it look like you have three is not an easy feat.
Maybe,
But
maybe.
I had an absolutely brilliant director of photography, Reynaldo Villalobos, who I love with all my heart. I did another film with him in Scotland, and I just I have an ease with him, and I think he helped me. I think he saw what I saw, and he got there a few weeks early, and I spent a lot of time with him, and I said, "This is what I see." We weren't able to do all of it, but we came pretty close. But when you have great actors, and I think in every role in that film, everywhere you turn, there's great acting and a great actor. And the actors, You got to have the script, but the actors always save you. And I thought it was interesting too. I didn't feel always that they understood. I believe the people with the producers understood what I was doing. I don't think they did, and that's okay. Then go direct, go produce something that you want to produce, as opposed to taking a check here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Go
sure.
produce. Go do somebody else's. But I'm too single-minded. They were not. They were not going to take me down, and they didn't. There you go.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of it. I mean, I know what it took.
Yeah.
Now, do I lie in bed and go, I wish I'd have done this and this and this differently? I wouldn't change a single cast member. But I wish I would have had another camera. I do.
So let me just go back to your novels again.
Sure.
What were you thinking with The Stonemaker's Wife? I mean, this is such a big. We know from the big Stone Gap series that you know how to handle large casts of characters.
Yeah.
But now you've got this epic, big canvas, multi-generational, 2 world wars coming to America from Italy, and all that entails. Did you enjoy the experience of doing such a big work?
Oh my God, yes. Are you kidding me? That was the highest calling of my soul, that novel. That's my grandparents' love affair. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I'm not saying it's easy.
No.
But the tougher the challenge is for me, the more I want to rise to meet it. I want to rise to meet it. And I knew that novel is pretty much my grandmother's and grandfather's love story. But then there's another element in it that I think is delicious and beautiful, which is the Enrico Caruso story and the Metropolitan Opera. You see, my grandmother loved the opera. And this is a Northern Italian. She's Lombardian. She's from the mountains. She got very sick on the way over here, just as it was in the novel. And she met my grandfather, who was from a village 5 miles from her own, but she met him in Hoboken. And he was a kid, and he was going over to fight in World War I for America to earn his citizenship. And just the melody of that, of loving this country and being an immigrant and willing to put his life on the line, well, that made me love him. I never met him. He died when he was 39 because he was gassed in the trenches of France. So right there, you got a story.
Sure, but
the Enrico Caruso part of it, it is absolutely the orchestral element to that novel. And I did it because I wanted to give my grandmother in heaven something that she would have dreamed of on earth.
Okay.
So I married that opera into her life as a seamstress. That's how I did it.
Yeah, no, the point I was going to make, but you've explained it well, is that when you take on an epic like that, there's no halfway to do it.
No.
You gotta let it rip. And you can't save anything.
No. No, it's all in there.
Yeah.
Every button, every sleeve, every shoe is in that novel. And even there's a lustrous scene when my grandfather's in the trenches of France and they'd sit in their hats because it was mud. They would sit in their hats. And I love that scene so much because I was one with my grandfather, who I never knew. And his courage, which I'll never reach or know the depth of, right? I'll never know the depth of it. But I know he was an extraordinary man because of my mother was missing him on the day she died when she was in her 90s.
Goodness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what have you learned about yourself after all this work you've done?
Well, I'm a little shocked right now, Jim, because I just did 24 cities and people came out to thank me. And I can't believe it. I because I do this to thank them. And
Yeah.
and it's a collection of stories along the way. I mean, we don't have all the time in the world to share them all, but I mean, what has been true for me from the beginning of my dream to be in show business, and I consider literature show business too, along with the television and screen work, is this deep and abiding connection. Like they're rooting for me. And I'm not only humbled by that, I'm floored by it. Because it's a brutal business in a lot of ways. Now I'm sure you know this because you're a good man and you do this for a living, that you make these incredible friendships along the way that have saved me at every turn. At every turn. And I've been able to pick up the phone if I'm in Dutch. And they swoop in. The people that love you swoop in and help. They roll up their sleeves. They did it during the Big Stone Gap movie. I called them and I said, I'm in trouble. I'm not able to communicate what it is I'm trying to do here to the people that brought the dough.
Yeah.
And they came right down and they helped me. And I don't forget stuff like that. You know, they get whatever they need from me.
Well,
it's been the most fun. That's the fun part too. You know, you're either, if you're raised Appalachian, you're either for me or you're against me. Now that's you got to answer your choices. Are you for me or are you against me? But the people all around me were for me. See.
Well, I think as a reader from a distance,
mm-hmm.
I think there's a general sense that you're truthful, that you're not manipulative, that you follow the old edict that writers open a vein and let it pour on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I go back to that section, what I said earlier, that because I had lived that story, I knew it to be true. But I agree with what you said, that it is true. Therefore, that's why I knew it was true. Not because I lived it, but because it was true. So let me ask you, what's next from you? Can you say?
Yeah, I want to adapt and film, create the movie version of A View from Lake Como. Oh, so that's next. But here's what's funny, Jim. I already gave it to actors. I've already put it out to actors. A year ago, when I finished the book, I said, read this. I think you could play him, or I think you could play her. And that was wonderful. So for the past several months, before I went on tour, I just had meetings, coffee, cookies, and just sat around and talked about what they envisioned and what I see. And that's luxurious when you get to do that.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. It's good.
My guest on this episode of Writers at Work has been Adriana Trigiani, author of many bestsellers and popular films, whose latest novel is The View from Lake Como. Adriana, thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Jim. This has been one of the most delightful times I've ever had talking about art. So I thank you. Thank you.
Writers at Work is a production of Bliss Publications. Erin Mitchell is our producer. Music is by Joni Mitchell, performed by Keith Jarrett. For more, see writersaTworkpodcast.com. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. Until next time, happy reading.